Roads to Liberty presents The Guardians of Liberty with your hosts, Nathan Barada and Zach Taylor.
Zach, I know we probably shouldn't be talking about free speech again, seeing as how we just did it 2 episodes ago, but I'm triggered right now, and I want to talk about free speech, so what do you say?
Do you need a safe space? I'm here for it.
Alright, man, we'll run a libertarian safe space here so we can talk about free speech. So the reason I want to do this is I see a lot of people, a lot of libertarians as well, which frustrates me, making a couple of very big mistakes about free speech. So I want to put them on the right track on knowing what it is, what it covers, and what it does not cover. Do you remember the recent controversy at Google when they fired one of their employees, James Demores?
It's Demore.
Demore, yeah. Do you remember that?
Yeah, he's been, actually this week he's been on Rogan and Dave Rubin, so he's popping back up.
I gotta check that out. I love it when Rogan has people on his show.
Yeah, so the guy is a little, his public speaking skills aren't very good. I mean, he's a tech guy. It's not his strong suit, but Rogan's able to carry him through the interview quite well, and it ends up being a really good interview because of Rogan's able to draw him out quite a bit.
This episode brought to you by the Joe Rogan Show. Oh, I wish. No, but one of the biggest mistake I see people making about this whole case is that, well, it's twofold. There are 2 mistakes I want to talk about. The first one is in thinking that Google violated his rights to free speech by firing him. Now, this is a clear mistake. Google has the right to fire individuals for whatever reason they want. And this is a very libertarian position. If Google thinks that him by writing that memo affects the work environment over there, they have every right to fire him. You know, this is not a violation of free speech. The First Amendment says that Congress shall pass no law. It does not say that Google may pass no rule. In a libertarian society, we wouldn't have discrimination laws. But what you would have is the right of individuals to boycott business. Now, saying I want to boycott a business because they're racist douchebags is not saying that I want the government to lock them in a cage. It is saying that I have the right to pick where I shop, and I have the right to tell other people that they shouldn't shop at certain places. And so if we do that in mass, it'll enact a change voluntarily without the use of force. And it's the same thing with this free speech issue. You can criticize Google for what they did. You can go after Google. You can refuse to use their business if you want over this issue. But none of that is an attack on free speech. So I wanted to get that off my chest because I see a lot of libertarians out there making this mistake, and it's very frustrating to me. You think libertarians of all people should know this. This shouldn't be something that we have to explain. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the only caveat, like I guess the best caveat that I've heard is YouTube, Google, whatever, Alphabet, the parent company, has a lot of monopolies. You can use other browsers, but Google connects to about everything. It is almost impossible to not use a Google service somewhere. So it is difficult for the free market to work, and Google has done what every other company has done, and they've used the government. They have their strong, like they've patented things that they had no business having a patent for, and because of that, they don't have a lot of competition. So there is an argument that they should be held to a higher standard because they've used government force to gain a monopoly. And I think there's some merit to that argument. In a society that we want to create, though, Google wouldn't be as big as they are.
I think the better argument there would just to get government out of the business of propping up private entities. You know, this is it's a slippery slope argument. I think when you use a previous government intervention, a previous government mistake to justify another government intervention. It's better just to get rid of the previous intervention and leave things up to the market.
I mean, that would always be my default position.
Exactly. I didn't want to talk too long about this. I see people making these mistakes. I see them doing it, and it annoys me. Libertarians should know better than this. We should know what free speech is and what it covers better than anyone else. And when we don't, it makes us look like fools. So, for everybody listening now, you're welcome, I guess. But we didn't want to spend too long on this. We did have an announcement from Senator Epke recently. Did you want to touch up on this?
Senator Epke announced that she was running for re-election.
Woo!
The worst kept secret, but it's good to finally be official, and now we can go full steam. We're going to start doing videos with her. I think she has her own people for that as well, so it'll probably be better than the videos that I can do, but I'm still going to do some so that we have content with her on our social media platforms, so you can share it with all your friends and get the word out, because we have to win this one. There's no way around that.
Absolutely, and I think we're going to start canvassing very soon. Over the last summer, we actually went out to several parades in Senator Epke's district. Had a lot of enthusiasm for that. It's a lot of fun to walk in parades and throw kids candy and give adults beer koozies. So that's going to continue. There's going to be a lot of canvassing coming up, and there's going to be parades again next year. So if you want to get involved in the Senator Epke campaign, just get on the LPNE Facebook page or get on our website, lpne.org, and send us a message. Tell us you want to get involved, and we'll straighten you out, tell you what opportunities there are.
And if you want to run for something, we're definitely looking for candidates at every level at this point.
Yep, we definitely are. If you want to run for something, we're in a better position now to run candidates than we've ever been. So we already have a few people who have expressed interest. Hopefully we'll have some good candidates for next year and going forward to 2020. All right, so who are we? Who am I, Nathan Parada, host of the Guardians of Liberty podcast, and Zach Taylor, the co-host of the Guardians of Liberty? Who are we? What's our background? How did we get involved in the Libertarian Party? So, Zach, I'll let you start on this. Who are you? How did you get involved in the party? And why should people care what you have to say?
That last question is the hardest one, I think.
Yes, it is.
I always think, why should I care what anyone else has to say? Which I suppose that's what makes me a libertarian, is I kind of don't. But I started transitioning from Republican to Libertarian over 10 years ago at this point. It was like 2005. Someone made a really good argument for why we shouldn't have been in Afghanistan still, or Iraq, both, really. I don't remember who it was at this point, but it got me thinking about it, and it got me really thinking about why I was a conservative, and it was because I don't think government does anything very well. Well, if government doesn't do anything very well, then that includes war, too. So I started moving towards the libertarian position on a lot of things. I even voted for Bob Barr in 2008, which, as much as people want to give Gary Johnson crap for not being a real libertarian, Bob Barr was setting the bar rather low.
No shame, dude. I voted for Bob Barr, too. It was my very first presidential vote, and it had to be Bob Barr. Anyway.
Can't have that one back. But then I went off into the military, being kind of this conservatarian, and as is the case with a lot of people in the military, being that close to government taught me that it is even more inept than I ever thought it could be. And by the time I got out, I was a card-carrying member of the Libertarian Party, and I wanted nothing to do with government anymore. I kind of fluctuate now between kind of the voluntarist and minarchist camps. My thought is we're so far away from either one of those things that I just don't care currently. I got involved with the party towards the end of the last election cycle. I actually went to the viewing party in Omaha where I met Mike Knievel from 1st District here in Nebraska. And I'm like, I want to help, but I'm really shy, so I can't really do the door-to-door thing. And I have like a crazy ex, and that's kind of prevents me from ever running because everyone knows how that goes. But what I want to do is anything that my skill sets can help, I'll do it. So at first I started the Dodge County Libertarian Party, which is kind of a thing. It's mostly just my friends. So we don't even have meetings. But if you want to be involved, I will totally have a meeting. If you want to be the chair, I have other things to do right now. So come on over, we'll hook you up. After doing that for a while, the thing that really started kind of getting on my nerves was watching the National Libertarian Party on their Facebook page humiliate the entire movement. And I got so fed up with it that after doing a press release for the state party about the officer that was shot in Omaha, I started thinking, you know, I understand the social media thing quite a bit, so let me do social media. It's something that my being shy and socially anxious doesn't really bother me there for some reason. I can do all this video work that I've always wanted to do anyway. So I started doing that a couple months ago. We've been really successful. Nathan helps me with that. Amy Weimer from Lancaster County does a great job with that as well. And we've quadrupled the interactions that we get on Facebook, and we're expanding into other platforms. So that's what I bring to the table currently.
That's awesome, and we're all very appreciative of the work you're doing on social media. As for myself, you were in the Army. I'm an Air Force vet. I did 5 years in the Air Force.
We'll try not to hold that against you.
Oh, you better not hold that against me. I mean, you guys can't do jack without the Air Force helping you out.
Oh, let's not go there.
Oh, okay. But anyway, military rivalries aside, I think it was way back in 2007 when I first, started the first inklings of libertarianism. As opposed to what happens to most people when they go to college, I actually became a libertarian when I went to college. I mean, I took a philosophy 101 class, and the teacher of this class, they were doing a chapter on morality, and they asked, what makes something immoral? And I'd honestly never considered the question from a principled standpoint before, because you grow up, you get basic lessons of morality, but you don't get very much of the hard nitty-gritty principles of the thing.
Yeah.
So without thinking very much, I answered, it needs to have a victim, without even thinking about it. And that was the moment that I think my trip down libertarianism began, because the teacher then turned to me and asked, why? And I never even considered that there could be a why to that. Like, what do you mean why? Of course it needs a victim. But then as I started thinking about it, I started realizing the implications of that answer. But wait a minute, what about all these laws that we have that don't have victims? What about drug laws? What about prostitution laws? What about this? What about that? All those things are illegal, but they have no victims, no real actual victims. So that's kind of turned me on the path to libertarianism. And once I had that principle down, it was really easy to come up with a lot of the, the more advanced stuff. And then come 2008, Ron Paul comes around and gives me a name for my beliefs. See, before then, I had no idea what a libertarian was. I'd never heard of it. I never heard of the Libertarian Party. I was calling myself a Jeffersonian for the longest time because I had no name for it. But here comes Ron Paul, and he's saying a lot of the same things that I'm saying. I'm like, well, holy crap. There's somebody else out there that thinks the same things I do.
I'm a vet.
I'm a whatever he is. The only thing he had to convince me on was the war thing, because I hadn't put that together yet.
Yeah.
But once he came out against the wars, that was it. And I was sold on it. So after I did my 5 years in the military, I got out. I moved to Nebraska. Found the Libertarian Party of Nebraska Facebook page and came out to a First Tuesday meeting. And I've been an active member of the party ever since. Presently, I am the vice chair of the Sarpy County Libertarian Party, which I founded along with Mike Kniebel. I will be running for chair this coming Wednesday, so maybe by the time the next episode comes out, I would have been elected. And I presently serve as the volunteer coordinator for the state, and now I do a podcast. Yay me!
Go you!
Yay me! So that's our background. We're both military vets. We where did you serve? Where were you stationed at? What places did you go?
My main duty station was Fort Sill in Oklahoma, also known as Satan's Armpit. And my deployment was UAE.
Oh, okay. See, my first duty station was Kunsan Air Base in South Korea, and then I was at RAF Mildenhall in the UK, and I got deployed to Iraq and TDY to Turkey. So, and I got TDY to Las Vegas once, which was a lot of fun.
Hey, what happens there stays there.
Yeah, I will not share any stories from Las Vegas. But no, yeah, that's where we're coming from. We're both military vets. We both we both are in positions in the Libertarian Party in Nebraska, and we're here to spread the message of liberty. But you know what? Sometimes the National Libertarian Party makes that difficult for us.
You mean all the time?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are days where it doesn't say anything, but there are days that people at National feel the need for some reason to start needless controversies. And we're here to talk about one such controversy involving the chair of the Libertarian Party, Nick Sarwark, and Tom Woods, who many of you probably know. He's the host of the Tom Woods Show. He's written many books, and he's a member of the Mises Institute. He was giving a lecture at Mises University, and it was essentially a speech about strategy, like what's a proper libertarian strategy. And he was arguing that we should reject libertarian universalism and instead focus on decentralization and localization as a more attractive pitch for people. Instead of telling everybody that we're trying to create a libertarian world, we try to create a decentralized world and then work with the little individual societies that grow out of that to make a more libertarian society. So it's not exactly a new idea, this decentralized and then libertarianized kind of idea.
I mean, if anything, it just sounds like divide and conquer.
Yeah, it's essentially what it is. But at the very end, he made a statement, and this is like at the very, very end of the speech. He goes, quote, "In other words, blood and soil and God and nation still matter to people. Libertarians ignore this at the risk of irrelevance," end quote. And you got to understand this is at the very end of the speech. And a lot of left-leaning libertarians took this as a dog whistle to fascists and Nazis. Now, in the context of the speech, that accusation really doesn't make very much sense. because the entire speech is about decentralizing power and breaking society down to its smallest elements, and then using in that kind of society, then building libertarianism from there, which is the exact opposite of what a Nazi would do. A Nazi doesn't want decentralized power. A Nazi or a fascist doesn't want to split society up into smaller and smaller elements. They want to centralize everything. You know, they hate the idea of states' rights. They hate the idea of federalism. They want centralization. They want, you know, an all-powerful leader who controls everything. So yeah, I mean, it's very, we realize that the term blood and soil does have negative connotations, but for me at least, in the context of this speech, what he's saying is place and family matter to people. They matter a great deal. And if libertarians are going to insist on ignoring that, we'll never get anywhere, which I don't think is a bad message. I think that if we ignore the natural loyalties people have to their location, and more importantly to their families, if we ignore that, we will be irrelevant forever.
Saying anything blood and soil is kind of a stupid thing to do. Like if I was running social media for Mises, I would have had a stern talking to with, was it Deist?
Jeff Dice, I think.
Dice. That is a stupid thing to say.
Yeah.
However,
yeah, go ahead.
People say stupid things, and like we talked about last week, sometimes you just got to give someone the benefit of the doubt and not assume the worst. I don't think he was trying to dog whistle. I think it was just a stupid thing to say.
Yeah, he could have just as easily said place and family instead of blood and soil. Another thing that occurred to me is he may have been referencing fascism, but saying that this is why fascists appeal to people, because a fascist does make this kind of appeal. You know, like this is why, you know, this is how they came to power, because they understand the importance of place and family. And we need to understand that too if we want to have a more liberty-oriented society. We can't ignore people's natural loyalties and people's natural tendencies, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Those important things to realize. And yeah, saying blood and soil, that is a very unfortunate turn of phrase to use. But it doesn't make it necessary. It doesn't make his statement wrong. It doesn't make his speech a Nazi dog whistle. Quite frankly, to me, the idea that a institute named after a Jewish intellectual, founded by a Jewish intellectual, and staffed by many Jewish intellectuals, you know, dedicated to the idea of Austrian economics, the idea that they're, you know, dog whistling to fascists and Nazis, the exact opposite of what they stand for, I think that it's just a ridiculous claim.
Right.
And I don't want to turn this into the Bash Nick Sarwalk episode. In a lot of ways, I like the guy, but in this case, I do think he's definitely in the wrong, because he came out after the Charlottesville incident, calling out specifically Tom Woods and in general the Mises Institute for, I guess, what he claims that they reach out to fascists and dog whistle to white supremacists, and he used that Jeff Dice speech specifically to make the point that that's what Tom Woods does. And this created a firestorm of controversy within the Libertarian Party.
I just want to jump in for a sec here. And I know someone's going to take this the wrong way, but be charitable, because that's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't we reaching out to these people?
Which would be the
Nazis, the white nationalists, like, they have bad ideas. And sure, some of them might be bad people, but most of them probably just have bad ideas. They see trends in the country. They derive answers from those trends that don't make any sense. They get caught up in tribalism that is ultimately pretty foolish. But isn't our job to kind of reach people with bad ideas and give them better ones? I mean, there's stories that I've seen on Facebook about, there was like this black guy that talked like 30 KKK members out of being in the KKK over the course of his life by being nice to them.
How revolutionary. You mean he didn't do it by punching them in the face?
Right. Like, it's okay to reach out to bad people, to be nice to them, and to try to bring them off the edge of crazy. Like, that is a noble thing to try.
And before anybody starts going off on Zach right now, this is the exact point that Dave Smith, the host of the Part of the Problem podcast, and a Jew, by the way, makes.
I love Dave Smith.
I love Dave Smith as well. Yeah, he made the same exact point. He said, you know what? It's not the worst thing in the world to reach out to people with bad ideas. Don't be like, oh yeah, come here, come here, you're now a libertarian, whatever. Don't compromise principle for it. But there's nothing wrong with trying to convince people that liberty is good, and to convince them that their white supremacist ideas are bad. There's nothing wrong with trying to convince them of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the charge that Nick Sarwark was making was not that they were simply reaching out to people, which I don't even think that's what they were doing, but that they're. I don't know. He claimed that he's not accusing anyone of white supremacy, but it from his statements it sounds very much like he is. Or that at the very least he thinks that the Mises folks need to prove that they are. That they need, because he was trying to get them to sign a petition that they were sending out to libertarians to prove we're not fascists. As if libertarians...
Sign this petition to say that you have a normal viewpoint. Like, okay. I'm not a Nazi. That's the default position, isn't it?
Yeah, it should be. I mean, just the very idea of asking libertarians to, hey, you want to prove you're not a fascist, right? Well, why do I have to prove I'm a libertarian? If you know what a fascist is and you know what a libertarian is, then you already know that we're not fascists.
Yeah.
It's only people who don't know what those terms mean. Those are the only people who are going to be convinced by a stupid petition.
So, to give the benefit of the doubt, again, on the other side, I can understand wanting to separate your party from that movement, given how many people were calling themselves libertarians that are now in that movement. Like the Cantwells of the world and the Molyneux and all these people, like even Warren Southern. These are people who were calling themselves libertarian and then got real nationalist real fast.
Yeah, there were a couple. They're like, I think Rich Spencer used to call himself a libertarian. Maybe, that Augustus Invictus character down there,
that idiot, yeah,
that everybody hates. But yeah, I mean, possibly. I mean,
I'm not saying we need a petition for that, but I do understand his desire to be like, hey, can we separate from these people a little bit?
Well, see, that's the thing of it. We're already separated from these people. These people marching in Charlottesville, these tiki torch protesters, they're not out there going, end the Fed, legalize weed, end the wars. That's not their thing. They're not marching for any of that stuff. And the things that they are marching for are so anti-libertarianism that I don't even see the connection.
Yeah. It's not their ideas. It's just the fact that some of them used to call themselves libertarians, that I'm sure he wants to distance them from the party. But the thing is, the people that he's trying to appease by doing that don't care. They're going to call us alt-right anyway because they're dumb. Or they are bad actors and they don't care. They're going to say what they need to say to lie and try to get public opinion on their side. There are those people.
Yeah, a petition is not going to save you from the wrath of hardcore progressives and violent Antifa folks. Signing a petition is not going to, stop them from coming after you. They're still going to attack you. They're still going to call you a fascist. I mean, These people have been calling freaking Ben Shapiro alt-right, for goodness sake. So what makes you think that signing a petition is going to convince them that we're not alt-right? You know, either they understand what fascism is and what libertarianism is, or they don't. You know, and if they don't, then you can explain it to them. Hey, this is what fascism is. This is what libertarianism is. Can you see now how they're opposites? Or they're just bad actors and they're going to label everybody a fascist, in which case there's nothing you can do about that, except not capitulate to them.
Yeah. You don't give those people an inch, not a bloody inch.
No. If they're bad actors and they're just acting and they're just doing what they think they need to do for political gain, smack them down as hard as you can. Not physically. We're not Antifa here, but smack them down with good arguments as best you can.
Verbal beatdowns.
Verbal beatdowns do not violate the non-aggression principles. Verbally beat them down. Yeah, I mean, and Sarwark used the fact that Tom Woods had Christopher Cantwell on his show 3 years ago as an argument against him. 3 years ago, Chris Cantwell was not radicalized. And there was...
I mean, he was radicalized, but not in that sense. He's always been a kind of a fringe actor looking for a cause.
Well, yeah, he radicalized. He identified as an anarcho-capitalist at the time.
Yeah.
He wasn't...
Actually, if I remember correctly, because I remember... Because that was when I was starting to go through that phase a little bit. I don't want to call it a phase. It's not a phase. For me, it was a phase. He called himself a brutalist, which is basically an anarcho asshole, if you get right down to it.
Yeah, I've heard this term used around before. It's one of those more fringe terms that, nobody really knows. I mean, I don't even know what it means. So
it's basically like survival of the fittest. No empathy, no compassion. It's all the things that the left would accuse us of.
Yeah, but my point being here is that he wasn't he wasn't a borderline Nazi at the time.
No.
I mean, he may have always been an asshole. I mean, no one's arguing that. But being an asshole doesn't make you necessarily a bad libertarian. It just kind of makes you a bad person, no matter what philosophical belief you have. You can be a good progressive and an asshole at the same time. You can be a good conservative and an asshole. I mean, they're not mutually exclusive. There's some in every political ideology. But then, it just seems to me that it's absolutely pointless for libertarians to be going after each other in this manner. I mean, there's no reason for it. I mean, the exchange that our chair had with Tom Woods could have just as easily been done privately.
Yeah.
He could have private messaged Tom Woods.
They could have talked it out like adults.
Yeah.
Not in front of everybody.
Instead of going all Donald Trump and going on a Twitter rampage, that the only thing this accomplished was in splitting the Libertarian Party and the Libertarian movement. That's the only thing this accomplished. Because now you got your people that are taking Sarwark's side, and then you got people like me who are going to side with Tom Woods. And now you got two factions that are fighting each other and looking at each other with suspicion instead of a unified, cohesive group. We were talking about divide and conquer earlier. Well, this has divided us. And there was absolutely no reason to do it. Nick went on the Jason Stapleton program and gave an interview, and he said that this was a confrontation that was a long time coming. And I'm sorry, I'm not seeing that at all.
There's virtue signaling. That's how I feel.
Exactly. That's exactly what this is. And I want to go over a couple more reasons he gave for thinking that this dispute was necessary. He mentioned in 2013 an American Renaissance article. An American Renaissance is what do they call themselves? Race realism. I think that's the nice term they've chosen for themselves. a quote-unquote race realism.
The people who don't understand how culture works.
Yeah, and think everything's just about race. But they wrote an article that was talking about, it was titled Libertarians and Race Realism from 2013, talking about potential allies in the liberty movement. Now, it's not talking about, okay, these are the race realism guys in the Libertarian Party. It's more talking about, okay, these are people that have some views that are similar to us, and so we think could be potential allies. They mentioned Hans Hermann Hoppe, and they mentioned Lew Rockwell. I don't know enough about those two individuals to say anything about.
Me either.
Yeah, but they mentioned Tom Woods in passing, and I want to read to you the paragraph from the article that did. All right, quote, if there were to be an underdog victory for immigration restriction libertarians, it would likely not come from the groundwork laid by Professor Hoppe and his annual gatherings of banished intellectuals, but from the historian Thomas Woods Jr., most famous for his surprise hit, The Politically Incorrect Guide to American History. Mr. Woods also writes for Mises, LewRockwell.com, and a handful of other publications. From time to time, he shows fairly strong conservative leanings. In his review of Professor Hoppe's book, he recommended reading it in tandem with Pat Buchanan's new The Death of the West. Additionally, he was once a member of the League of the South, and he is level-headed when it comes to immigration, unquote. So basically what they're saying here is that Tom Woods has some conservative leanings. Not surprising. He's a practicing Catholic, and he came from the right. And that he's more in line with their ideas of immigration than some other libertarians. But I don't think that's, to be frank, I don't think that's even accurate. I think Tom Woods favors individual property control, so that if you have property on the border, you get to decide who comes in and out. You know, I don't think he's an anarcho-capitalist, so he's not in favor of government restrictions on immigration. What he's in favor of is property restrictions on immigration. He's in favor of individuals excluding people from their own personal property. So I don't even think that section of that quote is accurate. I wrote an article from 2013, and I don't know. I don't think, bad people liking you for a certain policy that they agree on makes you a bad person, or makes it so that you have to, constantly be an apologist for your own positions. I mean, libertarianism does attract some people who like certain policies that we favor, but not because they're libertarians, but because they want the freedom to be assholes, essentially. I mean, you were talking about brutalism earlier. That's essentially what that is. They want the freedom. They look at our anti-discrimination laws, and instead of favoring abolishing those laws because they favor property rights, they want to do it because they want to be the ones discriminating. And the key difference here is that libertarians believe in getting rid of, anti-discrimination laws for everybody. If you're a Jew, or if you're black, or you're a minority, and you want to refuse service to a white person, you have every right to do that. See, a white supremacist wouldn't look at that the same way. A white supremacist wants the right to discriminate against you, but he doesn't want you to have the right to discriminate against him back. And that's the key. They do not have a consistent, principled opposition to those kind of laws.
Friendly fire. This whole thing is this friendly fire and virtue signaling, and I just don't care. I think both of them have taken the low road, and Sarwark annoys me a little more because I've watched his social media patterns lately, and I'm not happy with them. But both of them have taken the low road, and it's really annoying. And I wish that we had leaders that were on I hate to say higher class, but have some class.
But I don't know necessarily if Tom Woods has taken the low road. I mean, he was.
I've seen some interviews that he's done where he's basically just trashing Sarwark when he could just let it go.
I mean, I don't know if I would act any different from him though. If the chair of the Libertarian Party came after me, I don't know if I would punch him right back in the face verbally. I don't know if I wouldn't be acting the same exact way. Just the fact that this guy who and I'm not trying to bash Sarwark here, but he is wrong on this issue, in my opinion. He is wrong here, and he should be called out for it. Just the fact that he is a elected representative of the Libertarian Party. He is a standard bearer for liberty. He shouldn't be going after some of the best and brightest in the movement. And if he thinks that there needs to be a conversation had, do it privately. I'm sure Tom Woods would be happy to answer your call. I'm sure he'll answer a private message. I'm sure that there's a way to get in contact with them. The best way to do this is not to start a Twitter war. Donald Trump does that. We shouldn't. We shouldn't be we shouldn't be eating our own.
Mm-hmm.
That's the down and dirty of it. We shouldn't not be eating our own.
So here's kind of my response. Like, I understand your desire, when someone hits, you hit back. I get that. But look at how effective, especially like Amy and I have been, when we'll get a troll on our Facebook page and we bury them in positivity. And we put them in a hole so deep they can't get out of it. Because that's how you deal with someone coming at you like that, the best way. Like, you can hit back and it feels good. It does. And you have every right to. I'm not saying you can't or you shouldn't. I'm saying the best way is to just be above it.
No, we just have different mindsets there, because when someone comes at me on social media, I go right back at them.
Like, on my personal account, sometimes I will. But I'm reminded there is, and it's probably in Proverbs because all the cool witty things in the Bible are in Proverbs. But there's a part where it talks about responding with kindness towards your enemies is like heaping burning coals upon them. And that is especially true on social media because the whole world is watching you be a good person and them be a crap person, and that is victory. That's just how I feel. And I'm not perfect here. And I'm not even trying to say that like that I'm better than anyone else because that's my strategy. I'm simply saying I think that is the best way to go. That's how I deal with like our communist trolls for the most part. We get that one lady that keeps coming back talking about Koch brothers money. That's just whatever. Move along. But,
oh man, I wish we got some Koch money. That'd be nice.
Koch brothers money. Careful.
Koch brothers money.
We don't want Koch money. That's a whole different set of problems.
Yes, Koch brothers money. Koch with a K. I think we'll end our segment on our Sarwark right there. I think we've covered that enough.
So, the thing that I wanted to talk about, and this is where I will get challenged a lot, I'm sure, North Korea. So you've been in South Korea.
Yes, correct? I have.
I unfortunately did not get to go to South Korea. My unit was getting back from South Korea when I joined.
Oh, you missed out. It's great.
I have been told many a story. It is probably for the best because my self-control at that point in my life was not great. But what I do have for this discussion is I was in Patriot missiles. So all this talk about nukes is right up my alley. So let's start with you a little bit. Talk about the Korean Peninsula and why the threat is more than just missiles over there, like the artillery, and talk about the layout of the country.
Well, basically, South Korea is a very small, densely populated country. And if you want to just imagine it, a incredibly highly densely populated city, which
it's
is
about 10 million people in
Yeah.
2015.
and that's just in Seoul. That's not counting the surrounding populated areas that are on the border. That's just in Seoul. If you want to imagine a city of nothing but high rises getting shelled by artillery, I mean, the picture that's going through my mind of what that might look like, of buildings being blasted out of existence and crumbling to the ground. I mean, 9/11 was a horrifyingly traumatic experience for the U.S. Imagine that times 1,000. Imagine artillery shells falling into the middle of New York City and building after building after building falling down on unsuspecting people. Because the thing about artillery is you have no warning that it's coming. The North Koreans can fire it, and within a couple minutes, it's hitting your apartment building.
Right.
There's no time to get to shelter.
For reference, New York City has 8.5 million in 2016. So Seoul is almost 1.5 million more people than New York City.
Yeah, it's a huge city. I mean, it's a great place to visit. It's a great place to hang out. It's enormous.
Yeah.
It's the biggest city I've ever been to. You know,
I think the population per like square mile is like there's cities in China and India that are on the same level, but that's the kind of dense population we're talking about.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible, and that's just the damage they can do with conventional artillery. They can level Seoul without using a nuclear weapon.
And we're talking minutes. You can't evacuate.
No, you can't. And if it came, and that's the thing about it. Everyone wants to talk about war, like it's like I don't think they truly understand the gravity of what a war in Korea would look like, because we're not going to take the brunt of it.
No.
I mean, we have military bases in Japan and Korea, possibly Guam, though that's very questionable. That can be hit by the North Koreans, you know, and that'll be tragic. But New York's not going to get shelled. LA is not going to be shelled. We don't stand under threat of one of our largest cities being annihilated in nuclear fire. You know, we can pound our chests and brag what we want about how strong we are, but at the end of the day, we're not the ones that are going to suffer the most from what a war on the Korean Peninsula would bring.
Right.
You know,
if that war happens, we win in a week.
Oh, we can annihilate their conventional army quite quickly. I mean, I think people very much overestimate the capabilities of the North Korean military because it's very large.
Yeah.
So it's
a bunch of half-starved guys who are about 5'2". I'm not trying to be racist. That's what happens when you're starving. You don't grow.
Yeah, it's an entire country. The average height in North Korea is shorter than it is in South Korea due to that alone.
Right.
And they're all using outdated military equipment. You know, they're not flying the latest aircraft. They're not using the latest guns. It's all leftover Soviet gear from the 80s. They don't have any money to upgrade. So if it came to a conventional war, if the United States invaded North Korea, we'd win easily. If South Korea went to war with North Korea all by themselves, they'd win easily.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't a war the North Koreans can win. I mean, take nuclear weapons out of it, they have absolutely no shot of winning a war, you know, regardless of what they do. And the North Koreans know that. These are not... I get frustrated all the time when people describe the North Koreans as crazed, irrational maniacs. These are not irrational actors. These are people that know exactly what they're doing. They don't want to commit suicide. You know, when Gaddafi fell in Libya, you know, he was murdered by his own people in one of the most brutal ways. He was sodomized to death. Kim Jong-un doesn't want that. He doesn't want to die in that horrific way. He knows that the only way that he can guarantee that the United States will never invade North Korea is to have nuclear weapons. And we've created that incentive because every time a power gives up their nuclear weapons or the nuclear weapons program, within a couple decades, they're dead. You know, Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi, this case in point. They both gave up nuclear weapons programs, and the United States overthrew them within a couple decades of that. If North Korea gave up their weapons, and Kim Jong-un knows this, if he gives up his weapons, he'll be dead within a couple decades as well.
Okay, so I'm going to talk. So that's why this war would be a terrible idea. I'm going to dispel some nuclear hysteria here. North Korea can't hit Guam. Their missiles can reach that far. There are ships and THAAD units between them and Guam. That the chances of them getting a missile through are infinitesimal. Our high-end missile systems knock things out of the stratosphere. Google that if you don't know what that means. Our Patriot missile systems would protect South Korea and Japan from a nuclear strike. The problem is that the hit range is low enough that there will be fallout. That's not an ideal situation, but the loss of life would be fairly minimal. It would not be worth North Korea kind of using their bomb for that, or missile. They're not going to use a bomb. The idea that they're going to range Alaska is out of the question. California is completely out of the question, where we are taking them seriously when they're making these threats, is pouring fuel on the fire. They cannot do what they're saying they're going to do. The THAAD units are essentially impenetrable on the level of North Korean missiles. There's just no way that they're going to get through. If they launched it, South Korea, China, well, I mean, China's got their own missile systems, which are probably comparable. But if they launch it, South Korea or Japan, they'll get some damage. There'll be some nuclear sickness. Maybe some people die, but not serious. Obviously, anytime someone dies, it's serious, but it's not the catastrophe everyone's freaking out about. We need to calm the hysteria. It can't happen. The technology isn't there. Go ahead, sorry.
If we calm the hysteria, then we can't whip everybody into a frenzy for war. You know, it's one of the frustrating things about the Trump administration is that the media and the left will go after him for everything but war.
Yeah.
You know, the only time I've ever seen them let up on him was when he started bombing Syria.
Yep.
You know, and they're all about spreading these hysterics about North Korea. You know, and the thing about it is, if we go to war against North Korea, if we start a conflict there, China's already said that they'll back North Korea.
Yeah.
You know, who honestly wants a war with China? I mean, that's a whole level. That's a whole nother level there.
So there's a lot of people that want war with China.
Yeah, they're called idiots.
Well, defense contractors would have loved that war.
No, they probably would, but they'll die in the nuclear fire, same as the rest.
Oh, China can't hit us either. Just to be fair, they can't. For the same reasons North Korea can't. There's too much THAAD. There's too many naval vessels between them and us that have. I forget what the Navy calls their THAAD missiles. It's something different, but it's the same thing. They use satellites to line up their shots and knock things out of the stratosphere. The Chinese can't hit us either.
All the same, I'd rather not take that risk.
Yeah, I don't. But the problem is, if it's not a nuclear war, it's a conventional war, and then we're throwing our battle buddies into a meat grinder in China. That would be horrific.
You know, a lot of people over the centuries have discovered that fighting a land war in Russia is a bad idea, but I can't imagine that China would be much better.
Yeah.
You You know, it's a very large country, very densely populated. There's no way for the United States to really invade it. A war with China would be absolutely devastating. You know, a war with North Korea by itself would be horrific. Throw in China on top of it, and you've got, you know, a war for the ages. And who's to say how the rest of the world reacts to that?
Yeah.
You know, I don't think we'll have very many allies in a war of aggression if we start something in North Korea. And I think the Chinese would have far more chance of bringing in other countries to their side than we would. Yeah. There's no good option here. There's no positive outcome from starting a war against North Korea. Nothing good comes of it. You know, it's just ridiculous to talk about. And a lot of the people, and almost all the people really that you see calling for it, they're not the ones in uniform. They're not the ones who are actually going to go and fight. You know, they're not going to be the ones dying on the front line. It's not their cities that are going to be bombed. It's not their cities that are going to be reduced to rubble. It's not them who are going to be trapped in a subway station underneath buildings for weeks and weeks as we go gallivanting off into the mountains of North Korea. They're not going to pay the price. It's the South Koreans and it's the military that are going to pay the price for this. You better think about that before calling rashly for a war.
Yeah.
No one wants to think about these costs. No one wants to think about that. It's not going to be easy. A war in North Korea and possibly against China would not be easy. It'd be very costly. It would cost a lot of lives. And what do we get out of it?
Right. I just wish someone in the leadership of the American government would, instead of coming out and saying, well, if they do this, we're going to respond harshly, just come out and say, hey, go ahead, because you can't. And everyone knows it. And when you do that, it's going to de-escalate. Like, we don't care. You can't hit us. And you don't say it in like a daring way, but you come out and say, this isn't going to happen. We're going to stop this. Go back to your corner and think about what you've done. Be the adult here.
Yeah, and the thing about North Korea is, this happens every few years. I remember when I was stationed in Korea, the North Koreans, when I first got there, the North Koreans sank a South Korean, I think it was a fishing boat.
Right.
And then near the end of my time there, they shelled an island off the coast. You know, they do these things periodically. They want the world's attention. They want aid from the rest of the world. You know, and we keep giving them the attention that they require. This isn't going to lead to war. Like I said, Kim Jong-un is not suicidal. He does not want his country to go up in flames. And he doesn't want to be sodomized to death by his own people. Okay.
Anyway.
Quick wrap-up. Let's just go over some of the events coming up for the LPNE. This coming Wednesday at 7 o'clock at the Sump Memorial Library in Papillion, we have the elections for county leadership. If you want information on that, go to the Sarpy County Libertarian Party Facebook page. The location might change between now and then, so you know, don't forget to double check on that. Also,
we'll put out a post on social media.
Oh yeah, we'll share it all over the place if the location changes.
Yep.
So if you're like any of our social media pages, then you'll see it. They also have a park cleanup in Lancaster, in Lincoln this coming weekend. I believe they do that every week or every other week.
Yeah. Check out Lancaster's Facebook page. They'll let you know.
Yep, they'll definitely know. They're always ready to have more volunteers. And I believe that's all we have coming up. So that's all I have. You have anything to share?
We put out a video about if you want to be a delegate. The video didn't get as many views as we were hoping, so if you didn't see that one, but you're hearing this, And if you want information on how to be a delegate, shoot us a message. The short answer is time and money. So if that's interesting to you, reach out to us.
And when he says money, he doesn't mean you're paying us for it. It means,
no.
It means you're paying your way to the convention, is
Right.
what that means.
So I'm sick today, so that's why I've been a little, I've been getting carried.
All right. Well, if that's all we have, then thank you, everybody, for stopping by. We hope you enjoyed this program. You have an excellent day.
Goodbye, everyone.